idea. I will find him!
You're a breed. Men are brave.
Not about deserve. It's about what you believe.
Could've just peed on him.
Like brunch. Like, what is brunch?
The story of the Defiance is well known.
What, we some kind of suicide squad?
Heroes don't kill people.
Well, I do.
Martha!
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our new show. This is, what's it called?
It's called Enter the SnyderVerse, Nathan.
Enter the SnyderVerse. I'm Nathan, I'm one of your hosts, and I'm joined by your other host.
I'm Kyle, I do all of the tech stuff.
And I smile and wave.
And together we are friends.
We're cross-Atlantic friends.
Cross-Atlantic friends.
Are we friends? We're just colleagues now, aren't we?
We can be work colleagues.
I'm a
friends.
big fan of the Kyle Scott YouTube channel.
Thank you. I'm a big fan of your channel where you've never posted anything.
Thank you. You're a big fan of my Twitter.
I am a big fan of your Twitter. You get into lots of drama.
Specifically
around Zack Snyder.
Some might
say.
I love the discourse. Zack Snyder's a wonderful man.
We'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it. What are we here to do, Kyle? What is the concept of this show?
Well, the basic idea is the DCEU, as it's confusingly called, just finally came to an end for real this time, after ending about 4 times this year. Last year, I guess, technically.
Yeah, we're filming this in early January 2024, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, so obviously, like, The Flash was the end of the DCEU, then Blue Beetle was the end of the DCEU, and then finally Aquaman 2 is the end of the DCEU, right? We
always knew that Aquaman 2 was going to be the end of the DCEU. I mean, there was a little bit of punting. Maybe at one point The Flash was going to be the end because Aquaman was supposed to come out earlier.
I specifically remember in the marketing for The Flash, they were like, oh, this is going to be the way that we sort of introduce the new universe and wrap up this one. This was a definite thing people were talking about before that movie came out.
Yes, you are not wrong, but that was because Aquaman was supposed to come out before it.
Right.
It was always a bit of slightly misleading marketing, I think, because when the film did come out and they were like, this is the great big reboot, at that point they knew Aquaman was still to come out. We'll get there, ladies and gentlemen. The intention of this show is to just go through it.
Well, yes, because I have not seen most of these movies, somehow. It's a big oversight in my nerd library, I guess.
Yep, absolutely. Whereas I have seen every single one since Man of Steel in the cinema.
And you are a well-known Zack Snyder defender.
I am a Zack Snyder defender. However, let me just get this out of the way right now, Kyle, because I know the rep. I know the thing. I know the
Snyder Bros.
They're a little bit too passionate. They're a little bit, offensive sometimes. They are so smug that the Snyder Cut was better than the Justice League, which they are right to be. And that film was done through a great cause. Lots of money was raised for mental health charities. And after that, they became quite toxic. And they hate James Gunn. And I think they're just so bitter. They want Warner Brothers to sell the DCEU to Netflix so Zack Snyder can keep making DCEU movies. That's just never going to
restore the SnyderVerse.
Right? Now, listen. I would love it if the SnyderVerse kept happening. But it's never going to happen, and everyone needs to let go of it. Right now, it is embarrassing. I have my Snyder Cut hoodie. I got one. I think I'm now some sort of associate producer through the fundraising campaign for the Snyder Cut. I bought it through like the fundraising website and everything. Like I'm right there with you for the Snyder Cut, Snyder Bros. And I would have loved it if his vision continued, but it ain't. And frankly, you're all a little bit too... You're going down with the ship. I left. I got in the lifeboat, and I'm going to Gunville.
So that's what this podcast is then. It's an autopsy.
Yeah.
Of 10 years of very, very strange movies.
Me and Kyle are playing the role of a couple of people that work in the Gotham City morgue.
Oh, yeah.
And every week they bring us a new film to dissect.
And, of course, this time we're starting at the very beginning with 2013's Man of Steel, as directed by Zack Snyder.
Produced by Christopher Nolan.
Produced by Christopher Nolan. That's a weird little detail, isn't it?
It's a great detail. It's because he worked on the Dark Knight trilogy, and the Dark Knight Rises was only 2012. So at the time, he was very much having his fingers in the DC world. Nolan started this DCEU. People forget that.
That's why I guess we'll get into it. You have told me that you will bring me some of the behind-the-scenes production stuff, which I have no detail about, so I may ask you some of these questions.
I don't have them all lined up, but, I know bits.
You know bits. You know more than I do, which is nothing.
That's fair. It's very fair.
Where should we start? Should we start just by giving our overall thoughts on this movie?
Let's give our overall thoughts on Zack Snyder's The Man of Steel.
Is it I thought it was just Man of Steel.
Yeah, it is Man of Steel.
Okay. I feel like you should go first.
Oh, good fun. Ladies and gentlemen, we should note me and Kel haven't really discussed our stances on this film beforehand. Well, Kel knows my stance because I've ranted about this film for years, but I don't this is Kel's first time watching it, so I'm not really sure about his deep dive thoughts.
It's a very famous movie, and obviously I know a lot about it. I can't possibly go in blind on a film like this, but this was my first time watching it full from start to finish.
So, my view on Man of Steel is it is the best Superman movie ever made. I think Henry Cavill was simply born to play this character. I should give you a little bit of background on my views on Superman, though, so that everything I say is coloured through this lens, right? I don't want people to be misled and thought that I'm just running around pillar to post going, this one's great and that one's great. I'm not a big Superman fan, historically, right? I listen, full respect to George Reeves and Christopher Reeves, these, the people who led the way for Superman movies. It's not for me. I like older films, I could rant and rave about older films, but there's something about the early Superman movies that don't click with me. It's just the way of the world. Some things just don't click for people. Might be heresy to people of a certain demographic, but those films just don't move my radar dial. I don't care. This take on him, though, the Clark Kent, Superman, Kal-El, just terrific for me. A little bit edgier, a little bit more kind of drama, a little bit how does this person thrown into this society act? What is the responsibilities to the world? And what are the world's, how should the world treat someone of this caliber arriving on their doorstep? And that's just terrific for me. And Henry Cavill just simply looks the part, and the costume is great. I think that's the best look. Men in tights, not for me, really. Sorry. The big red underpants, no thanks. This look is great. I like the textured feel. Henry Cavill is just built like a brick, so he looks great in it as well. The hair, the voice, the jawline, terrific. Great film, great actors. Like, no one in this film is miscast, which I think sometimes films can be coloured by maybe not liking a performance or thinking someone isn't suited for a role. It just, for me, everything just clicks. Click, click, clickety, click, click. And, I know this film just gets some shtick for some... I get a bit like how Kyle says you can't go into a film like this blind after so many years. I can't really talk about this film ignorant to what people's criticisms are, but by and large they don't bother me. It's not even something that occurred to me when I first watched it. I first saw this movie in 2013, saw it with a friend at the time, and I actually didn't... fun enough, I didn't like it that much.
That's interesting.
It was my first ever Superman film. I hadn't seen any other ones at that point, and I knew the cliche Superman, as like an idea in pop culture. So, went and watched it because my friend wanted to go see the new Superman movie. Not known to be part of a shared cinematic universe. That was not the thing at the time. People always say that the DCEU rushed to catch up with Marvel. That may be true in the next movie, but in this movie it's very not so.
Well, we can talk about that more later, probably.
Yeah, we can talk about that more later. But I just saw it isolated to what it was, and then it wasn't until later when Batman vs Superman was going to come out that I went back and watched it and thought, no, actually, this is a really good film. So that's kind of my introduction to the film. What was yours, Kyle?
Well, okay. I can tell by the way you've talked about this film that I've already figured out what our fundamental disagreement is going to be. So, full disclosure. I did not enjoy this film overly much. There's certainly parts of it which I think are pretty good, but overall, I didn't have a great time watching it.
Really?
I found this film very engaging as a critic. I'll put it that way. There's a lot of stuff to dissect about it.
There is.
But I wouldn't necessarily have chosen to watch it on my own terms. And I think what it comes down to is what you were saying about not liking normal Superman. I do like normal Superman. So I think that's where the fundamental disagreement's going to come in.
Right, okay.
Is I am not a fan of this darker interpretation of Superman. I think it doesn't work well for what the character is supposed to be. And it's not necessarily a problem with any of the casting. I agree that Henry Cavill is very good in this role. I think he would make a great actual Superman. But just the direction of this movie was never going to work for me to begin with, regardless of how well made it is. Does that make sense?
Yes, you think that like the foundations is just completely flawed.
I think the foundation is a strange foundation, which I think going forward is going to make for a very strange universe of movies.
Would you have preferred if it was like a more science fiction Captain America? Because I should say, I think that is what Superman kind of is. It's what the MCU Chris Evans Captain America was. And I love that, but I don't need two of that, you know? I'm very happy to go in a different direction.
Well, this is something I mean, we can start on it if you want, but the Superman is Jesus thing, I'd always heard about this as part of the movie, but actually watching it and sitting down, this movie is so Jesus. It's
You think it's
overwhelming.
Nonsense?
I wouldn't say that. It's just the film is overtly religious in a way that I wasn't quite prepared for. Speaking as a very atheist person myself.
I mean, I'm one of those pesky agnostic fence sitters. I fall on atheism, but there's always a bit of hope, you know. You keep your fingers crossed about an afterlife and such things like that. I find this film to be quite existential, because the reason I find it to be quite existential is primarily because I don't think the film and then the rest of the franchise never really fully answers some of the questions it poses, but that's because we never got a sequel.
Mm-hmm. You don't count Batman v Superman as a sequel, then? I
count that as we're going for the cinematic universe, baby. That's
right. Okay.
I think that's more of a Batman movie. I think it's probably the closest we'll ever get. We'll talk about it, but I think it's probably the closest we'll ever get to a Batman movie in that universe. But I think that this film deals with a lot of, as I mentioned in my introduction to the film, definitely the Jesus allegory is there, but it's when people talk about the second coming of a religious figure, what does that do to your society? People always talk about, you know, all these religious fundamentalists in various places around the world, and they always seem to speak about their religious prophet with such zealous. But they're so fundamentalist that if the prophet was to show up, they would probably kill him. Because they're just, you know, they're a little bit too kind of using it strictly.
Well, and as you say though, like the film does ask all of those questions, but it never really answers them.
Because we're getting Man of Steel too, Kyle. It's this felt like the first part of a character arc. I think he has a character arc within this film, but it's more personal, I think.
Oh, I disagree with that.
Oh, do you?
I do. I think one of my fundamental problems with this movie is that Clark Kent, the movie just sort of happens to him. He never really, like, changes across the course of it. There's never a moment in this film where he decides to become Superman. It just sort of happens to him.
Well, I think there's a moment where he goes from leave me alone, I'm going to town hop. If I ever have to expose myself, I'm going to disappear again. No one need know who I am. Don't come for me, Lois Lane. To I'm going to embrace the suit, embrace my heritage, and I am going to do something to stop the bad guy as opposed to just hoping he goes away.
When is there a moment where he just hopes the bad guy will go away?
He doesn't hope the bad guy's going to go away, but like he could. He spends the whole first half of the film just sort of town hopping whenever someone gives him grief. Mr. Truck Stop Man, he just walks out, he doesn't expose his powers, he saves the oil rig people, jumps off his ship, never going back to those ship people again. Okay,
but the movie does open with him saving people, though. It opens with him saving the people on that oil derrick.
Yeah, but he's like doing it like sheepishly, He's not like, he's not being like, this is who I am the saviour, hello everyone else on the fishing boat. He sneaks off. And I know secret identity, right? Very familiar with the concept of that in these films, because everyone's got one, unlike in Marvel. Mm-hmm. But I feel that it's always just, okay, I'm leaving to do something else. He never has a home, really. He's hiding from who he is. He's running away always. He's stepping in almost reluctantly.
I think that's you making a lot of inversions that the movie doesn't make, because the movie makes it pretty clear that he's always welcome at the Kent family home. Like, it's not as if he's
yes, I know,
actually homeless.
Yeah, well, I know he's not literally homeless, but he isn't staying at home, is he? He's trying to explore.
I took that as, my interpretation of that was he was out looking for answers. It wasn't like he was out there looking for that Kryptonian ship, was my impression. That was what the movie led me to believe.
Well, this is what I have in my notes here, right? How does he find that Kryptonian ship?
I mean, my guess was he somehow heard about the secret military operation and went to go check it out.
Right, because people just hear about that, don't they?
Well, in comic book movies, they do.
You just hear about the secret military base.
He's specifically looking for stuff about aliens because he knows he's an alien, right? This is the kind of plot hole that doesn't bother me.
Well, is that... I know he knows he's an alien, knows he's different, he probably does want answers, but I think that part of the film doesn't really convey to me that, like, that's what he's actively doing. I always thought he was running away.
Running away from what?
From being the weirdo in his town. As you see, they delve a lot into his childhood and about him coming to, like, dealing with the fact that he's different, and he, saves the school bus when he's younger, and everyone knows that he's a freak,
Well, no, they think he's a divine being.
Well, yeah, but everyone's scared of him, right? Everyone's scared of him.
Uh-huh.
What do you think of the Kryptonians, Kyle? Tell me that. Let's go to the start of the film.
Let's go to the start of the film, because one of the first notes I have here is Krypton is a big beehive, ? What's, this is a very interesting interpretation of Krypton in terms of design.
I love it. I think it's like in-game civilization, for like in a dystopian sense, right? I don't mean in like a utopia, because the point of Krypton is they're a bunch of silly, dogmatic bureaucrats that, they're just sort of asleep at the wheel, just sort of letting their world be consumed.
I did have a question about this that maybe you can answer, which is, does the council know that Krypton is going to explode and they're just denying it, or do they genuinely not know? And just don't believe Jor-El?
I am of the belief that they kind of maybe are aware of it, but are just kind of going, we'll be fine though. Like...
Okay.
Again, you say it's quite religious. I always think it's quite political. It's like these people are just sort of, this climate change is happening, but, that's, oh well. Okay, your point.
And the solution is eugenics.
Well, I think that probably happened before. I think the eugenics is probably just part of their dystopian society. The end of their civilization, it's probably related. I imagine it came after the eugenics.
Well, see, I also interpret that as a part of the religious metaphor, though, because for me, a big part of the undercurrent of this movie is a kind of, like, religion versus Darwinist kind of thing going on. Because, there's the whole thing about survival of the fittest, and the Kryptonians are this engineered society where everyone has, like, a role that they're born into. Yeah. And that's kind of, like, the ultimate apex of survival of the fittest is... you exist because you are the best at doing this thing.
Yeah, like you are born to... We have a vacancy in military leader. Let's make a new human being to fill that slot for us, and that is what they will be raised to do. We need a new farmer, we will make a new person, and that's what they will be raised to do.
Exactly. And then the alternative version to that is like Jor-El and his wife, they kind of believe that they've lost something in not having like choice and chance and that divine spark in there anymore. And that's kind of like the conflict of the movie there.
Yeah. You know, like they think that the civilization needs to change. The civilization is doomed. And if you don't make these changes, you don't actually do something to break with tradition, you're never actually going to progress. And in this case, it was too late to progress, but they could at least keep their species on the table by evacuating one baby with the codex.
Right. What is the codex, by the way?
It's like the Jango Fett DNA for the clone troopers.
Right, I guess so. Okay, and it's on a weird. I actually like the prop of the weird skull, but
yeah, it's like a monkey skull or something with like tattoos engraved in it.
Looks like something from Destiny.
Well, so I absolutely love the start of this film with, like, you know, when Jor-El walks out and it's the lens flares everywhere and the Kryptonian ships fighting each other because of the Zod's uprising, and he gets his big Revenge of the Sith Obi-Wan Kenobi lizard, but it can fly, and he's like zooming around. I think that could be a whole movie. That'll be terrific.
Again, this just comes down to personal preference, but I just don't care for that design. I think not so much I don't hate the whole, like, obviously they're going for a lot of like organic shapes and very bug-like. There's a lot of like bug motifs going on.
I think I don't have the name of the person that done production design. I absolutely should, but Zack Snyder definitely likes his sexual.
Oh yeah.
His sexual.
There's a lot of Freudian imagery in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. As we see in his latest film, Rebel Moon.
I have not seen Rebel Moon. I guess maybe we should do that as well.
One of the first shots of Rebel Moon, right, is like a space field, right, and then like a slip in space opens up, and that seems to be their warp drive, and a ship comes out of it, but the tear in space opens vertically, and it looks just like a vagina.
Oh yeah.
And the ship coming through it looks just like a, you know.
In this film, it's like Superman's little ship is clearly like a sperm. That's like the visual implication there, and the ships, the
Zod's little prison rockets.
Yeah, they're big black dildo ships, and then they go into the prison ship, and it goes into this like vortex, and it's just a very sexual image.
Yeah, the Phantom Zone. Yeah.
Yep. And ironically, it's what saved them because the Kryptonians are idiots, I guess.
Yeah, so I kind of see it as like a society bogged down tradition. They would rather continue their traditions than adapt. And
yeah, I understand that.
So, like, the punishment for this sort of crime is always, you know, reconditioning in the Phantom Zone. That's what we're going to do to you, right? Mm-hmm. That's what we've always done. That's what we're going to do. Is society doomed? Sure, but this is what we do. This is how we deal with things. Bye-bye. And then the ultimate result of that is, of course, they live. But that wasn't the goal. The goal was for them to hopefully be reconditioned.
Yeah, I'm fine with all that, but more just the design of Krypton. It's so like there's a lot of empty space. There's a lot of like they're in like the hospital bed where they're giving birth, and there's like nothing on the walls, on the floors. It's just like grey.
It's all Spartan.
And that's this whole movie. This whole movie is very grey.
Yeah, I see a lot of people like you say like all the colours are very muted. I love the muted look. I don't need, like, see when you see the way comic book movies have gone the last few years, especially where everything's just bright and everything's popping, if everything's colour grade, everybody turns up the colour contrast, especially if you look at things like Joss Whedon's version of the Justice League. Hate is a strong word, but I dislike it. I quite like a film that's not so visually, even if it has a distinct art style, if the colours aren't just wild. Look at Thor Love and Thunder, you know? Like glam rock. I enjoy, like, because people always say that they can't tell the difference, like, between Superman and, like, the Kryptonians in the film. I think the blue and the red actually pop quite well, but not, like, comedy pop.
I
Like he
totally disagree.
Oh, see, this is, people always say this, right? The whole time this movie's been out, and I always consistently, quite firmly disagree with the view that he doesn't pop out. I think the blue and the red really stand out in this film, but if they were to up the contrast, I think it would look like he was walking on set to the wrong film. Like, he's got to be appropriately graded to still look like he belongs in that film.
Well, that gets back to the more baseline problem, though, which is making like a dark Superman is so contrasty to the entire idea of Superman, who's supposed to be this really bright, poppy figure.
Well, I get with the ideas of this film, the savior returning to Earth, or coming to Earth, I suppose. It's not a second coming, it's the first. And what is his responsibilities to Earth and all that, the drama. Like, I'm fine with that. I if it really, again, if you won't like the foundations of the film because you disagree with the direction, then like we can't come together on that part. But I just happen to love it. I don't need Captain America for this film. I've got Captain America over at Marvel, and you know, this good old soldier. Like, that's fine. That's perfect. I love Chris Evans. Very happy Captain America got a happy ending in Avengers Endgame. But in this, like, I really like the idea of how does humanity react to this person revealing themselves to the world? How do they react to the
Let's
coming?
get into this then, because you keep saying that, but the movie doesn't show that. The movie talks about that a lot. There's so many conversations about, like, oh, Clark, you can't reveal yourself because the humanity, how will they react? But then they never actually show humanity reacting.
They kind of do.
Oh, they kind of do.
Well, I mean, like, when he's a child, they are very clearly spooked by his reaction to, like, the school bus, etc.
They really don't linger on it that long, though.
I mean, the child bits are all obviously cut down. He's, like, bullied for being different, you know, and his dad, like, comes and picks him up and everything, you know.
Okay, but those bullies, though, like, they clearly don't know that he can lift a truck, otherwise they wouldn't be bullying him. They'd be scared of him.
They absolutely don't know, but it further pushes the idea of him being outside of everything, you know? Him being different it is definitely because he's literally an alien.
But that's not like a unique scene to Superman, though. That scene of a kid being bullied, that's like...
I know that's in everything.
That's like every movie ever.
I know that's in every movie ever, right? But it is in this movie, and it's in this movie for a reason, you know? Just because it's cliche, you know? And then obviously the military's inherent distrust of him, even though he clearly proves himself. And then that pivotal moment in the Smallville battle where the Colonel says, this man is not our enemy, because he proves himself to be of worth. He's the good guy.
Yep, he proves it by smashing up an entire small town.
Listen, collateral damage, right? Aliens are literally attacking.
I know it's addressed in Batman v Superman, but this is the movie of collateral damage.
Yeah, no, I know, right? And by the way, I should say, I think other critics have spoken about this, and this movie's 10 years old, and of course I've watched other people discuss it, so I'm probably not going to bring up every idea to be original, but people, you know, we'll get to the end where people talk about how, like, they just break up Metropolis, but these people are not really sure how to use these new powers that they've got arriving here. And especially in Clark Kent's position, he's never had to fight someone with the ability to resist him before. All this is totally new to everyone with that power set. Like, they're trying their best to just stop getting wailed on, you know? And they just think hitting each other with bigger mallets will do the job. And it doesn't really, but they've got to keep trying because it's new. They don't know where the limits are. So I'm perfectly fine with it all. And I think the film is very much... Zack Snyder's a director who loves dealing with, like, the physique of actors. And, like, you know, when he sees Henry Cavill hold up the oil rig as it's collapsing at the start of the movie, and it pans down just to look at his chest and his torso holding it up, you know? And in other films he does, like, you'll see characters, especially if you see, like, the 4:3 aspect ratio in the Snyder Cut, you get more vertical shots of full body actors, and you see how they act in fight scenes. He's very much a person that's obsessed with the physicality of man. And I think that just is really shown in these fight scenes. So I do think that we get, can humanity trust Superman? You know, at the end where he speaks to the Colonel who ends up being Martian Manhunter, but that's not in this film.
See, I already know that, and watching this film, knowing that he's Martian Manhunter, it just doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
It's a ridiculous retcon.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not going to defend it. I love this film, but like it's still just a film that makes silly mistakes at the end of the day. And they're still a little bit kind of weird. They're still spying on him to see what he's up to. And he's like, listen, you can't control me, but we're going to do this on my... Like, you need to just... You won't be able to stop me, so you might as well just stop stressing about it and just trust that I'm going to be okay. You know? And again, Man of Steel 2 should have happened. Like, I think some of the can humanity trust Superman things are never fully resolved. They never get resolved. We're doing an autopsy on the DCEU, so spoiler, it's never really resolved. I think Superman comes a long way, but in this film specifically, I think he comes a long way to knowing where to draw the line.
Here's the thing, right?
Yeah.
I am by no means a Superman expert. I've said this before, I'll say again. I'm much more of a Marvel guy when it comes to this sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'm much more engaged in that side of comic books. Most of my experience with DC is with Batman, and less so with the rest of the Justice League cast.
Probably same outside the DCEU, to be completely honest with you. I've never watched any of the CW stuff, and I watched one season of Teen Titans.
Oh, no. You watched one season of Titans.
Sorry, Titans.
Because calling it Teen Titans wouldn't be badass enough.
Yeah, no, you're completely correct, sorry. I also watched all of Gotham, but that's Batman, so that doesn't count.
Right, so... when I talk about, like, what Superman should be, like, I'm not actually that experienced with Superman, right? You talk about not liking the original movies, I don't actually think I've seen any of the old movies. So... you know, I'm not coming from an expertise area here. More so, like, Superman, he is the superhero, right? He's the original. I don't know if he's actually the original, but in old terms...
He is the poster boy of I Am Save the Day.
Yes, exactly. And to take that idea of, like, the ultimate hero that you can aspire to and all of this stuff, and... do this, it doesn't feel like a good fit to me. I think there's other characters you could do this with. I just don't think Superman is the one to do it with. Well, I think fundamentally Superman works better as a more simple character. Well,
for me, I find that, you know, because this, obviously in the context of it's coming out, there was was it Brandon Ralph? The name escapes me. There was a Superman movie that came out in 2008. I believe.
Yeah, Superman Returns.
Yeah, and obviously there was the Nick Cage Superman that was supposed to happen with Tim Burton. Like, Superman's been a struggling franchise for a long time on the big screen before Man of Steel. You could arguably say Man of Steel didn't help matters, but Henry Cavill had some longevity. And I would say that it was boring. Like, just a flat good guy. Like, no edge. Now, you could say sometimes simple things are just fine. Not everything needs to be edgy, you know?
Well, but you're talking to someone who I've said before that Captain America is my favourite superhero, so...
Yes.
I think
Captain America... Like, I think Captain America has more dimension you would give maybe him credit for. I think Superman really is bland, though, on the surface of things.
I don't think that's true at all. Like you can do still interesting things with a guy who's all-powerful. Like, there's still interesting stories you can tell with that.
Well, I couldn't even begin to make a proposal for what that would be, because this is where I'm at on it. I like a little bit of drama, a little bit of what am I capable of, where can I draw the line, where could I be pushed to go, you know? Because... you can do all of that drama in a Superman story. Other stories have done that before. Well, that's what I think this is. It is a Superman story that does that. Like, this is what I'm telling you. I think, because something I will say that I love the DCEU for, that I think happened earlier on in it, that happened less as it went on, and I think Marvel never really does. Let characters just talk to each other. I think that Marvel, great films, love them, a lot of quips is a quip a page. Snappy, witty retort, you know? I like, in Man of Steel, just where people talk about things. Like, just kind of just exploring people's character and less exploring the plot of the film. And I think that this film does that quite well. I love the relationship between Clark Kent and his dad. Not Jor-El, though I think Russell Crowe's wonderful in the film.
Are we getting onto the Packhead discussion?
I think we probably will, yeah. But like, I think that his dad being fearful for him because he's different, very human. Might be flawed, but he's also kind of world weary. He knows what humanity is capable of. He clearly knows how people will be treated when they expose themselves to be different. And he's just worried about his son, and he knows that when the day comes where he needs to expose himself, he needs to make sure he's ready for those responsibilities. And then we get to the tornado.
Well, now, let's go back a second to Packent, because I did remember that I do have one significant interest in Superman, which is I watched Smallville when I was a kid.
Okay, so I should know, I've never seen Smallville. I've seen Mr. Sunday Movies talk about Smallville.
Smallville, the first couple of seasons are really good, and it gets progressively worse as it goes on. But like the first 2 seasons of Smallville are really solid. Anyway, that's besides the point. But the first season of Smallville especially has a lot of Pac-En in it. And to me, the point of like Pac-En and having Superman be raised by this nobody family in Kansas, right? It's to give him that down-to-earth human connection, as opposed to there's alternate universe stories where Superman is raised in like Soviet Russia or whatever and becomes a totally different kind of character.
Yeah.
The point of the Kents is that they are very like human.
All American.
And all American, sure. And Pac-En specifically is someone who like pushes Clark to say like, it's like the opposite of this movie. It's not like hide your powers, it's you have these powers and you should use them to help people. As opposed to in this movie, it's a whole bunch of like, you've got to stay hidden, Clark, because people, they won't understand you, as opposed to like what you should be, which is, hey, you've got these powers. It's with great power comes great responsibility. It's Uncle Ben. Pac-En is usually Uncle Ben, right? It's basically the same idea.
Well, what I would say in retort to that for the Pac-En thing is, I wouldn't say that the dad, Pac-En, is ever telling him, never be your potential, but wait for the right moment. You know, cometh the hour, cometh the man. Like, make sure that you're in a position where society is ready to accept you. You know, make sure you're ready to take it. Make sure you're mentally prepared. It's about timing, really. You know, is this a good time?
I just don't know if that's a solid philosophy.
I can see the flaws in it.
Anyway, tornado. What's up with the tornado?
So
maybe the most infamous scene in this movie.
Yeah, his dad's ankle gets trapped in a door.
Well, before that, a magic tornado shows up. I know tornado.
It's tornado land, isn't it?
Sure. And they all run under an underpass, which I don't think actually helps, but whatever.
Yeah, apparently you're not supposed to do that, but I don't know anything about that. So.
And then the mum is like, oh no, the dog is trapped in the car still. And Clark's like, I'll go get it. And his dad's like, no, I'll get it. Why?
It's just a dad being a dad, protecting his son.
But he knows that his son is going to be fine if this happens. He knows that.
Yeah, but it's simple. It's just a dad. It's just fatherly care. He probably didn't even expect to die doing it. Clearly, he was just going to get the dog. I'll do it. You look after your mum in case a tree blows past and you need to protect your mother. I'll go get it.
But during that scene, Pac-En is holding a child and he passes the child to Clark instead of carrying the small child to safety.
Because he's a hero.
Okay, I don't have a problem with Pac-En dying. It's just this way of doing it where, he holds up his hand and says, no, Clark, don't save me because you'll expose who you are. That's never been the point of Pac-En's death to me.
Yeah, it's
The
to be
point-
something that Clark couldn't stop. He couldn't save
Exactly,
his dad. Yeah,
right?
no, I know that.
That's why usually his dad dies of like illness,
a
I think.
heart attack, I think.
Yes, exactly. Which is something that Clark can't stop. Whereas this has the very like weird like no Clark, I will die to stop you from showing that you're a superhero to these people. It hits a very strange note to me.
I think it kind of shows like, can you control yourself, Clark? Are you willing to let me go to prove that you know, like, when you're ready? Is he ready yet? Like, he doesn't really know who he is, you know? Find out who you are as a person, then decide if you want to get involved.
I just think it's a very weird note to hit that Superman let his dad die. I don't know. It just seems weird. It seems like it speaks to the larger problem with this film to me, which is that it doesn't really establish who Clark is at all and like what his motivations are. I mean, we were talking about this at the beginning about like we both have completely different interpretations of what he's doing on the run at the start of the movie because the movie never really makes it clear.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair enough. It's fair enough to say it. I've always been perfectly happy with my reading of the film. Like, I think that. Hold on, I did write something about this down in my notes. You were right, Kel, telling me to take notes because it's coming in handy. It's coming in handy. When I'm like, we spoke about this last night. When I'm like looking and I'm like thinking about taking notes, like I'm trying to take notes of maybe like questions that I'm taking the film for granted that it's word, and then like I'm taking notes about things that I just can't resolve in my mind. Like if I can explain away the thing in the film without really having to think too much about it, like I'm kind of fine with it. But if the film really gives me things that like I just in my head I can't resolve, that's what I'm going to write. Or things I need to praise the film for. Write that down as well. You know, like we haven't spoken about Hans Zimmer, but we'll get there. And really for me, the death of Pa Kent is, you could say it like it's just in the film because that's part of the origin story, but I really think it is to show it's like respect for his dad, you know? It's like my dad thinks I'm not ready. I'll take him at his word. It is more existential than personal.
I can't disagree with that. I just don't agree with that interpretation.
Yeah, well, like I say, it's definitely a different take, you know? Superman was a little bit stagnant and you had to mix it up a bit.
And in the wider scheme of this, I understand why they assumed that was a good direction to go, right? Because this is a year after Avengers came out and basically revitalized the entire superhero genre.
This would have been in production probably at the same time.
Sure, but then it's still like you're comparing to Iron Man instead of Avengers, right? Whatever. Or probably more likely Captain America, right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, this would have come out after. This would have been entered production after Captain America came out. Yeah.
Right. So they're establishing DC as like or not maybe DC because I don't interpret this as a film that was intended to have a cinematic universe at all. It feels very self-contained.
Yeah, I think maybe like it would have been a Superman universe and not a DC universe.
Yeah, more like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, something like that.
Precisely.
But obviously they're going for something very different from Marvel, which I don't necessarily think is a bad approach. Yep. It's just this kind of the darker, more storytelling type stuff just works better for me with Batman. I don't know what to tell you. That's it. Batman is a character with a lot more.
Man, you think this is edgy? Wait until we get to the next film.
Oh, I know. Batman kills people. I'm so not looking forward to it.
The Avengers kill people in their hundreds. It's fine.
Yeah, but it's Batman though. His entire deal. We're not there yet.
We're not there yet.
We'll do that next time.
We'll do that next time. Well, I tell you what, why don't we speak about, like, what we thought of, like, things like the production, the music, the cinematography. What do we think of the lens flares?
I'm fine with the lens flare.
The shaky cam.
One of my notes is I hate the shaky cam. This is purely personal preference, but I just find it so distracting to watch when you're like, it's just a scene of two people talking and the camera will not stay still. And it's like, it takes me out of the movie and I can just picture like a cameraman who's struggling to hold this heavy IMAX camera. That's all I can see when there's like a shaky cam scene. I just find it so distracting.
For me, it evokes a more intimate setting, and less looking at, well, even slightly, I guess, with an action scene, it's like I'm.
Well, I
in
guess
the
I'm
room.
getting that too. I'm picturing the cameraman in the room.
For me, it kind of more evokes being part of the conversation, like you're a third person at the table, a silent partner, definitely, obviously.
A counterpoint to that, my eyes don't shake that much.
No, but you are a person sitting in a room watching a television screen, you know?
Yeah, and when I'm sitting with my friends, I'm not like shaking. It just doesn't evoke that to me.
It's fair. It's absolutely fair. I always think it makes it feel more intimate. I think that... What do you think of the snap zoom scale?
I think all of the production stuff is fine. Obviously, I have my issues with the color grading, which we've already talked about.
Yeah.
But overall, I think like the cinematography is all fine. The music is good. Hans Zimmer, as you mentioned.
Oh, okay. Can we talk about the music more?
I don't know if I have that much to say about it, to be honest. I think it's fine. I think it works for what the movie is. It didn't leave a huge impression on me.
To me, that piece, it's called Flight, that the Man of Steel theme, that is the Superman theme to me. I think it's better than the John Williams theme.
You're insane.
No, hands down. I think it's got so much more energy, so much more power.
Hans Zimmer down?
What?
Hans Zimmer down?
What do you mean?
You said hands down, so I'm doing hands
Oh, you're
down.
doing a bit? Oh, no!
I'm doing a bit.
Oh, Kyle, Marvel's where you do bits, not in DC. Not in DC, Kyle. We're all about drama. Yeah, no.
I will not take this John Williams slander.
Listen, so John Williams is probably my most favourite composer ever, followed by Hans Zimmer. That being said, I feel like the Superman John Williams theme is given like historic respect and reverence. In terms of what piece of music would I listen to when I'm at the gym, when I'm walking around, when I'm going to work, when I'm in public transport, it's never the Superman theme from John Williams. It's always the Hans Zimmer theme. I think it's just such a pounding energy. I think it's just such a more upbeat. Now that comes down to personal taste, I guess. I like music that's a bit more upbeat. I like the slow songs. Nothing wrong with that. But I just love
I don't
energy.
think upbeat's the right word you're looking for there.
Oh, it's so dramatic.
More dramatic, sure, but the original Superman theme is very upbeat.
It's very optimistic, yeah. I'm not
Yes.
saying like it's a downer, but I mean like what makes you want to just go for a run? It's gonna be the Hans Zimmer one. The John Williams one makes you want to stand still on a rooftop. You know? Nothing wrong with that. Personal taste. When I think Superman music, I think the Hans Zimmer music. And that might come down to how I don't really have a childhood connection with the original films, but like the Richard Donner ones. But this is just, I could rant and rave about the whole Man of Steel theme forever. And in Junkie XL, done wonderful remixes for it for the Snyder Cut. It's just, great. I think
Again, like, you're talking about it with such reverence, I don't think I could hum it right now. And so, different tastes here. I could absolutely hum the John Williams theme.
that's because you're new to it.
Sure, okay.
Give it time. Let it sink in, Kyle.
Other production things I will say that I did like, though, I think that in terms of like fight choreography and the way the powers are represented, I really like the Smallville fight in terms of like how they're like chucking stuff around and all the choreography of that action sequence.
Yeah.
I don't like the Metropolis fight with Zod. I think it's just a bunch of like, it just becomes like a Dragon Ball fight, which I don't really enjoy. But I really like the Smallville fight.
I love Zack Snyder's tendency to focus so much on the heroes that like we don't care about the civilians.
See, I don't like that. I like that in the Smallville fight, he's like making a point of like saving people, and he catches that guy from the helicopter and all that stuff. I like those details.
They're perfectly fine details, but I think when the stakes are to a certain level, I'm perfectly fine for these two gods to just smash through skyscrapers.
That just doesn't interest me at all. I've got no interest in watching gods smash into each other.
I love it.
If I wanted that, I would just play a fighting game.
But see, this is where with our age-old debate how I think cinema's superior. But I just find watching like the zooming in hands of like these two little bean figures at a distance fly through a skyscraper and have it explode, and then
It just
just
becomes too
terrific.
much after a while, where it's like, oh yeah, they're going through another skyscraper, now he's smashing his wall into a building, and now they're throwing a satellite at each other, and it's like... I just
Wayne
don't care
Enterprises satellite, Kyle.
I don't care about that stuff anymore, because at a certain point it's like, well, what are the actual stakes if they're not actually doing any damage to each other whatsoever? This is just action figures smashing each other.
It's where he snaps his neck, Kyle. That's what we're doing it to. It's to try and get him to stop. It's to get him to stop. How do you stop him? You must just pummel him until you get him into a position where he can. Because he's going to kill you.
At a certain point, Superman is doing just as much damage to the city as Zod is, if not more.
We'll get there, Kyle. We'll get there. We'll get the Batman perspective next week.
But as I was trying to make a compliment, I do like the choreography of that first scene. I do have some questions about how the Kryptonians' powers work. Because the movie doesn't... Because their whole plan is they want to terraform... They want to terraform Earth to make it more like Krypton, right? How does that... But Superman's powers come from the radiation of the sun, and they're not changing the sun.
They don't... Yeah, but I presume you change the atmosphere, the ozone layer reflects the harmful UV rays, from terraforming. Some such atmospheric changes the sun isn't going to be as bad.
But they specifically talk about the age of the sun as being the source of Superman's power.
Yeah,
that doesn't seem like it has... It seems... The way that sounds to me is if the sun on Krypton was newer, they would all have superpowers.
I've never interpreted it like that. It's just like a sun that's not so close to literally exploding, and it's how it interacts with the atmosphere. I always presume when they spoke about terraforming it, it's because, again, the tradition, even if Zod was against tradition as well, but he wanted to bring back Krypton and its dystopian authoritarian state, and the terraforming thing would...
I did have a question about why they wouldn't just keep the superpowers, but understanding that Zod isn't all there, sure, it makes
also
sense.
30 years of learning and suffering probably isn't something he's too patient for.
Except he learns how to do it in 5 minutes, so that's not really an issue.
A little bit more chaotic.
Yeah, but it's not as if it took him super long. Clark says, just zone it out, and he just looks at his hand and he manages it. So it doesn't seem like it's that difficult, at least to him.
True, you're not wrong in that respect.
Talking about Zod, obviously Michael Shannon is great.
Oh, Michael Shannon's terrific. He was made for the part, man. I think he just gives off a really good, unhinged general. See where he's shouting at Cal's mum, being like, "I will find him," as he's getting sent out. He's like, "Oh, terrific," and he's just screaming it. He's so intense. He's so intense. And he kind of has a friendship with Russell Crowe, but it's a bit like how in the Michael Bay Transformers movies, Megatron and Optimus were friends maybe at one point, maybe kind of.
Uh-huh.
But they've completely gone two different paths in life, and now they're just warring. It's wonderful.
I would say he's probably the best part of the movie for me.
Oh, he is great. I loved it when he came back in The Flash.
That doesn't mean I think he's a perfect villain, because I don't know. It's one of those things with stakes, right? Where for the first movie you're supposed to ramp up the stakes for each film. This is ultimate stakes and the first ever Superman villain that shows up, right?
I don't guarantee you're going to get a sequel. Don't save your ideas for the future. Go on.
I don't know. Zod is he's evil Superman, right? This is the same thing with all superhero films, which is they just fight an evil version of themselves, right?
Maybe in a power set sense, but I think their process for moving, not so. I think before the world engine is destroyed, Zod is totally focused on just getting the terraforming done, bringing back Kryptonians. He needs Clark to be, either going along with the plan or dead, but only to the end that achieves his goals. From the second that the world engine is destroyed, he becomes much more personally involved in ending Clark's life.
I don't disagree with that, right? But he's obviously people would say it's better if a villain has, like, some sort of point, right?
Yeah.
And Zod, he doesn't really. Like, he's just wrong about this. He wants to bring back a eugenicist empire. He's the bad guy, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I there's no point in the film am I like, he's kind of onto something there.
But there's moments like he retrieves the Fortress of Solitude spaceship, right?
Yeah.
Which is apparently a seed ship. It's got some Kryptonians on it, which
ancient crashed Kryptonian ship.
They kind of introduced that at the same time that they blow it up. So I don't know. But they show it has a room with, like, the pods where they grow people in it, even though the ship is 20,000 years old. So I don't know how those are still alive, but frozen, whatever.
Did you see one of the pods was open?
Yes, I was reading on that apparently it was supposed to be Supergirl.
Yeah, they had Supergirl plans for this DCEU that was just never touched on. I think Zack Snyder gets a lot of crap because people seem to think he was the boss of the DCEU. At no point was he ever in charge. He was just the chief creative that the bosses hired to do the things they wanted to be done. Mm-hmm. You know? So, like, he doesn't really get, like...
Would that also mean that Supergirl wasn't his cousin because she was some sort of 20,000-year-old ancient Kryptonian?
It's possible, yeah. As we've discussed, he's willing to change things.
I guess so, yeah. I'm assuming that's not the backstory they use for Supergirl and The Flash.
No, absolutely not. It's from a different universe.
Right, okay.
We never actually got the official DCEU Supergirl. We never met her. We never even acknowledged that one exists, and for all we know, there was never one.
It's just like, there's nothing that, like, going back to Superman, there's nothing that Superman needs to learn. That's the best kind of villain, is, like, a villain that teaches the hero a lesson. What lesson does he really learn from Zod, other than you have to stop the bad guys?
Killing's wrong unless it's the fascist.
Does he learn that, though?
Yeah, he screams when he kills Zod.
Because...
He doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to do it, but he accepts
Isn't his plan to kill all of the Kryptonians in the first place? The movie doesn't establish, this is what, okay, next snap scene, right? It's a big meme, right? I don't have a problem with Superman killing Zod, I think that's fine. The problem with that scene is afterwards when he has a big breakdown, because the movie has never actually established that he has a problem with killing people.
Does it not? I kind of always feel that he's trying to act with a certain amount of restraint.
I don't think so. Like,
he's finally found his own people. He's found the people that all his life you say that he was searching for at the start, whereas I thought he was running away. And he's got these answers, and now he's having to kill his own kind. Like, it probably would be pretty destroying for him.
His plan for the rest of the Kryptonians to destroy the world engine is to use his ship to open a black hole and suck them all in it. Isn't that killing them?
Well, I think that's because the people on board that world engine are making it about Earth or them. Any Kryptonians that Zod doesn't need to die now in a technical sense. They have stopped the world engine thing from happening. Zod could live. He could have a Kryptonian fellow.
He wasn't like humming and hawing about that plan though. He's like, oh, I don't know about this. All those Kryptonians on that ship are gonna die. He just does it. There's still like emotional drama about that point, but suddenly when it's Zod, there's a problem with it.
I think it's because he now knows that this person doesn't need to die. Zod doesn't need. At that point, those Kryptonians, if they're on that ship, they need to die in order to save the planet. Which is what I think his primary focus is. But now,
it's the same with Zod. Zod says he's gonna murder everyone.
But he doesn't want. But like, it's more it's him. It's his own hands. It's him that's responsible for ending Zod's life. He doesn't.
Okay,
need
but
to
just
do it.
before this, though, when they're on,
he would wish that he could rehabilitate the man. He would take him away and put him in some sort of red Kryptonian chamber from the comics and make all well. But it's not. It's just not on the cards.
Counterpoint. The scene before this, he blows up the ship with all the unborn Kryptonian babies on it and says Krypton had its chance and uses its laser eyes to blow up the ship. So,
yeah, but that's because he doesn't want the planet to come back over Earth. He would rather Earth stay alive.
No, that's not the that's the ship. That's the ship that Zod steals from the Arctic that he destroys at that point.
Is that not the ship that they're using to thrust into? The world engine?
It's a different ship because Zod shows up in that ship chasing after the bomber plane.
Yes, you're correct.
It's a different ship. and Superman blows it up without a second thought.
I kind of can't quite remember the choreography of that scene, if you want to talk about a ship flying through a city skyline's choreography.
It's
I remember the
after...
Krypton had its chance line. I remember that very vividly.
That happens on this like scout ship that has all the
that's like his Fortress of Solitude. Yeah, and
Zod is like, if you blow up this ship, you doom our entire race or whatever. And then he says Krypton had its chance and blows up the ship. So like he's fine with killing all the Kryptonians. And then the movie later says, no, he isn't actually.
I just know that because that ship wasn't brought down, that ship is a part. It was brought down. It wasn't destroyed though, because it becomes part of it's a part of the DCEU. It's a part of resurrecting Superman. It's a part of bringing around the Abomination. Not the Abomination. That's Marvel. Doomsday. Sorry, they're both awful tadpole villains.
Yep.
Like this ship isn't gone.
You're talking with things I don't know. According to this movie, that ship is gone.
It crashed. Doesn't mean it's destroyed.
It blows up. It looked like it blew up.
Does it? I have no memory of it blowing up.
This is like a Death Star and Rise of Skywalker situation.
I just have no memory of it blowing up. I remember it being like done. Like I remember him laser visioning across the saplings.
It's like any movie.
That.
It crashes and then there's a big explosion.
That could just be a hull breach.
Apparently it was, but the language of this movie says that ship was destroyed. And with it, the hope for any more Kryptonians to be reborn in the old traditional sense.
Well, Superman doesn't care about the old traditional sense. He has the Codex in his DNA. His children would be Kryptonian.
Yes, but he does murder all those unborn Kryptonian babies. What I'm saying is this movie is pro-abortion, I guess.
I mean, I wouldn't put that past Zack Snyder. He seems like a lovely gentleman that would be pro freedom of choice.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle, I think we could both say that we have big disagreements on this film.
You think that's coming across, do you?
I think that's coming across a little bit here. I can't even necessarily say that you're wrong on every point, Kyle. I really can't. I just got to say your reading of the film is fundamentally different to mine.
Yep, I think that's fair.
I think it's very fair. So this film, obviously, whilst not directly, let's go a little bit into like it came out and what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So this film came out, and it was just big success, very controversial.
It's one of those like commercial success, critical, not so much kind of films,
critical
right?
Mixed bags, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess this is a 10-year-old movie. Things will fluctuated. Critics score 56%, audience score 75%.
Okay.
But yeah, a mixed bag. So 56% for critics. That's really what matters for this sort of discussion. It was a mixed bag. Slightly more liked than disliked, but we'll basically say it cut right down the middle.
What that means is I'm in the majority in my opinions, basically.
That's what I'm saying. I'm in the majority. 56% of people liked it.
I don't hate it. I would put myself on like the 5 out of 10 range.
Yeah. Well, it obviously spawned a franchise. And it made enough money, and we got a couple of Easter eggs in this film. We see a LexCorp truck a couple times in the movie.
Yeah, one of them blows up and Superman doesn't look at it because cool guys don't look at explosions.
Exactly. We get a Wayne Enterprises scatolite.
Mm-hmm.
Big satellite up in space. Looked wonderful. And these are all blink if you miss it things.
Sure, these are clearly Easter eggs. This isn't like Thor's hammer at the end of Iron Man 2.
Yeah, exactly. Another Easter egg. Well, right. You may have seen discussion about this. Apparently this isn't true, but I swear to God I see it every time I watch it, and so does a lot of people at the time. When Superman is flying through the middle of the planet between the world engines,
mm-hmm.
There's a brief second of footage where his face morphs into Christopher Reeve.
I don't remember seeing this.
Right, so it's very subtle, right? And someone broke down this sequence frame by frame and says, bullshit, it's not there. And I've seen the pictures, because, people do the frames and they put that into like a photo collage that you can like scroll through. There is no single frame where Christopher Reeve's face is present. That's like a granted. The consensus is apparently that was just bullshit. But there's something, it's just perfect casting. There's something about in the motion, in the moment, with the lighting, there's a few bits of frames of footage where it looks like Henry Cavill is Christopher Reeves. It's just, and I see it every time I watch it, and I remember seeing it in 2013 at the time. Like, this is part of my memory. This isn't something like I've adopted later on. Though I never actually Googled it at the time. Because, again, as I said at the start of this episode, back in 2013, I actually didn't think much of Superman, Man of Steel. I just sort of left it. Superman had always been boring to me, and I think at the time maybe I thought it was a bit boring to me as well. I was like 14 or 15 at the time. But yeah, so lots of little bits in this film. Little bits of film myth. You know, it's like, can you see Slender Man in these creepypastas, etc.? Can you see
It's going to be interesting when the new Superman film comes out, and it comes out that you're still not a Superman fan at all, and you just like this version.
Wouldn't that be insane? So here's the thing. I am very optimistic for James Gunn. I'm a little bit worried that he can only make Guardians of the Galaxy style movies for superheroes, because based on everything we know about his film, there's lots of superheroes in it, and it'll be like a gang outing, even though he insists it's a Superman piece.
I am cautiously optimistic about the new DC universe. From everything that's come out so far, I'm kind of worried it's going to continue being as much of a mess as the DCEU was.
And here's the thing, right? So I say I like a dark Superman. Maybe the answer really is I just don't like the old incarnation of Superman because I think the films are corny. That could totally be it, because I unapologetically love Captain America. I love Chris Evans in the role. See I could do this all day, getting up and fighting the power, and just like, you know, he's always going to be the one that's on the right side of this discussion, like in Civil War, even though at the time I was Team Iron Man.
Of course you were.
Like, I love that character, but I also think that, bar occasions like a Civil War, we don't get to dive into the inner conflicts of these characters, really. And I think that a lot of the DCEU does that constantly with their characters. A little bit of the inner struggle, which I think that's what these films do quite well. So, who knows? Maybe I will love James Gunn's new take on Superman. I say new take. Authentic take. Ha 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 ha. But this film was definitely the start of something. Zack Snyder kicked off a very turbulent few years for Warner Brothers superhero division.
I'm looking forward to going through it, believe it or not, even though I didn't particularly care for this movie, and I assume, based on that I will probably hate Batman v Superman. Would that be a correct guess?
I think you will probably come out of it the same as this.
Okay.
I think
keep in mind that I am a very big Batman fan.
Yes, I think that you'll get some of the finest Batman action scenes you've ever seen in the film. Though you don't like that it kills people, that might get you. But there's just some good bits. There's some good bits, right? We'll get there. Zack Snyder was taken back after this, and he was taken on. He was the DC Extended Unit. Very strange name. I always thought it should be the DCU. That's what I always thought it should be. Even though
yes, I agree. It's a very clunky name.
It would just be the Detective Comics universe, I suppose, at that point.
Yeah, because I always thought Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, whereas
it should really be the DCCU.
Yes,
but,
but I was always fine with the C having a double meaning. You know, it's just the DC Cinematic Universe, and the C is just once, but they're twice. You know,
the D stands for DC. We just don't talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. The D stands for DC. Exactly right. And fun fact, you know, with the Batman vs Superman, it was greenlit before Civil War was. So
I'm aware of this, yes.
There was a rush happening, but it was all very much sort of misremembered after the fact. But we'll get there. So, Kyle, where can people find you online?
Oh, are we done? Wow, okay.
Are we not done? Have we not done? You got more to say? Edit this bit out if you're not done.
I think I'm done. I did have other notes, but it
we never really spoke about
to...
Lois Lane. I love Lois Lane. She's great in the film. I love her doing journalistic bits.
I do like Lois Lane in this film. I think Lois Lane is a highlight of the film as well.
I like it when she says "Welcome to the planet" at the end. I like that. I smile every time. I watched it last night.
I think there is actually good romantic chemistry between her and Henry Cavill. So
I think Amy Adams and Henry Cavill are on fire in these films.
I do think the line at the end where he's like, the first kiss thing only counts if you're a human is weird and clunky. That's a bit awkward.
Yeah.
And there's another line in there as well. It was in the scene with the satellite where the female sergeant lady is like, I just think he's kind of hot. And it's like, what is that line doing in there? What the heck is that?
That's a little audience chuckle. That's like when you're I remember people laughing at that at the time. That's a little kind of everybody knocks elbows with each other and goes, hey, because he's a really hot guy, hey, you know. That's like a little thing for the cinema, you know. That's what that is. Or if you're sitting watching it with
if you
family.
say so, I just find it really distracting.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's definitely kind of our eye roll moment now, especially when you watch it yourself. You're like, God, this doesn't need to be here. But I you know, maybe it's just the nostalgia goggles. It doesn't bother me at all.
But yeah, overall, I think just because of the nature of this conversation, I'm going to come across as very negative. Like I say, I think it's like a 5 out of 10 movie, and that's not awful. It's not a train wreck, and we're going to get a couple of train wrecks in this series, I know for sure.
Boy, are we. People might think I'm some sort of DC just mega stan. I'm really not. I just have very fond feelings towards Man of Steel. The DCEU is an absolute roller coaster of quality.
Yeah, I have a feeling as this goes on, we're gonna even out in opinions going forward, probably.
Yeah, I think coming through this, me and Kel will end very much in the same boat, even if right now it looks like we're on far sides of the ocean, which we literally are. I just, maybe we can talk, I find it so strange that Zack Snyder has such a cult of personality, because whenever you see interviews of him, he just seems like a very normal guy. Yeah, he's a very normal person.
I don't get how he's established such a vitriolic fan base for just a man who seems quite content to just make some movies.
I think a lot of it evolved through... This will probably be a bigger discussion for the Snyder Cut, but I think a lot of it evolved through people just really wanting, like, DC's vision to stay true, and they were fed up with the knocking pillar to post. They fell into the keep to the original plan camp, and then were so vindicated through the marketing to get the Snyder Cut that they were just like, not only is it because we want DC to keep, like, the original message get lost, they're like, it's also because Zack Snyder's just the best person to ever walk the earth, and let's support everything he ever does, you know?
Right, yeah.
His films have always kind of been quite divisive. His Watchmen film, quite divisive. People seem to universally like 300, and he did a zombie movie way back in the day. It was a remake of a Romero film.
And he's continued that with Rebel Moon being... Is the Rebel Moon divisive? It seems more kind of universally trashed at this point.
Yeah. I mean, listen, Twitter, the algorithm still gives me Snyder stands for everything. You'll get people saying, like, Rebel Moon was amazing, hashtag sell the SnyderVerse to Netflix. because Netflix made Rebel Moon with them. And it's like, do you care about Rebel Moon, or do you just care about it as far as it thinks that it's going to...
get you a SnyderVerse,
yeah, exactly, right. So the court's kind of out in that, time will tell. But we'll talk about Rebel Moon one day, maybe. So, Kyle, where can people find you on social media?
Well, people can, of course, find me at Kyle the Scott on YouTube, where I do mostly video game-related stuff, but I do other stuff as well sometimes there. And where can people find you, Nathan?
People can find me at Nathan Tinney on Twitter and Nathan.Tinney on Instagram. And I do bits. Kyle is much better at not getting involved into the online discourse than me. He's got a lot of... Like, he gets all his venting out on his YouTube channel. I don't do that. I get a lot of my venting out either on this podcast or on Twitter.
Not on this podcast. I guess we should mention we have another podcast.
We do have another podcast. I believe on YouTube this is going up in the same place.
Yes, it is. But It will be on different places on Spotify and stuff.
Brilliant. So this is Enter the SnyderVerse. Our other podcast called Name Not Included. Available in all good podcasting outlets. And
it's much more general. It's just a discussion about whatever's recent.
Yeah, we will speak about everything Marvel, Star Wars, pop culture.
This podcast is on a mission.
Yeah, we're doing a thing here. This is like a limited series. This is like the Kenobi show.
Oh yeah. So what you're saying is it'll be excellent.
It'll be top shelf.
Let's not aim for. Let's aim for an Andor, okay? Shall we?
Let's aim for an Andor.
Aim for Andor?
Let's aim for an Andor. I should also
As aim
mention
for
to you that-
Andor and settle in Ahsoka, you know?
I should also mention to you, ladies and gentlemen, that Kyle, because he's a YouTuber, he is naturally also a Disney shill. So he has nothing nice to say about DC at all. He gets paid by Big Mouse. Big Mickey pays him.
Mickey is free to use. I own Mickey now.
You-
Mickey is mine now.
Disney is actually a Kyle the Scott on YouTube shill. So everyone, thank you very much for listening. I hope you've agreed with at least one of us. And please tune in next week where we will be discussing the next outing of the DCEU, Batman vs Superman, Dawn of Justice.
Well done, very smooth.
Thank you. I'd be a good TV presenter.